Ready for a deep dive into, like, all of human history?
Buckle up.
We're tackling Yuval Noah Harari's Sapiens today, and let me tell you, this book...
It really flips the script.
Totally. Forget what you thought you knew about why humans rule the planet, Harari says.
It's not because we're so great, inherently, you know?
Right. It's not like we're just objectively better than other animals.
Exactly. It's our unique ability to cooperate in huge numbers, all thanks to, get this, shared myths and imagined realities.
Okay, whoa, hold on. Imagined realities? Like what?
Think nations, laws, corporations, even money. These things only exist because we all agree to believe in them.
Mind officially blown. But before we get too deep into all that, let's rewind to the beginning.
Way back.
Harari takes us on this whirlwind tour through massive chunks of time.
From the cognitive revolution, where language and imagination exploded,
Huge game changer.
to the agricultural revolution, which, and this might surprise you, wasn't all sunshine and roses.
And then there's the scientific revolution, which, well, that changes everything.
It really does. And, you know, what's really interesting is that for a big chunk of history, we weren't the only humans around.
Wait, what? You're telling me there were other, like, human species?
Oh, yeah. Homo sapiens shared the planet with some fascinating relatives, like Homo floresiensis, for example.
Who?
Homo floresiensis, they lived on an island in Indonesia, and get this, they were only about 3 feet tall.
3 feet tall? Are you serious?
Yep. Scientists sometimes call them hobbits.
No way! Like Second Breakfast and Hairy Feet hobbits?
Well, maybe not exactly like Tolkien, but they were uniquely adapted for island life. Their small size probably helped them survive with limited resources.
Wow, that's wild. Okay, so you've got hobbit humans. What else?
Then there were the Denisovans, a mysterious group we only know about from DNA found in Siberia.
Denisovans, never heard of them.
They're a pretty recent discovery. And we still don't have a complete skeleton. But here's the thing. Denisovan DNA shows up in some modern humans, especially in parts of Asia and Melanesia.
So, multiple human species all at once. What happened to them? Did we, like, outsmart them, or what?
It's a question that keeps scientists up at night. There are a lot of theories. Some experts think climate change might have played a role, while others point to the possibility of interbreeding between different human groups.
So we could have a little Denisovan or a hobbit in us.
It's possible, although the hobbit connection is less likely, given where the remains were found. But for the Denisovans, yeah, some populations today carry their genetic legacy.
Wow. Okay, but sadly, it sounds like not all of our ancient cousins made it.
Sadly, no. And in some cases, conflict might have played a part. We don't know for sure, but it's a sobering thought.
It really is. Okay, so we're the last humans standing. Where do we go from there?
Well, Harari argues that fire was a total game changer in human history. And I'm not just talking about warmth and scaring away saber-toothed tigers.
Yeah, fire's pretty useful.
It's essential. But here's where it gets really interesting. Harari suggests that cooking led to shorter intestines in humans, which then freed up energy for our brains to grow larger.
Hold up, you're saying cooking literally made us smarter.
It's a fascinating idea. Think about it. Cooking makes food easier to digest, which means we get more nutrients with less effort. That extra energy could have been crucial for developing larger, more complex brains.
So our ancestors were like, hey, this fire thing, it's pretty great, and I think it's making me smarter.
Right. It's a fun way to think about it. And you know how you feel after a huge, heavy meal. You can barely think straight, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Total food coma.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Imagine if our ancestors were constantly in that state. No wonder cooking was revolutionary. It's like, hello, extra brain power.
Right. Okay, so while we're imagining these early humans, there's another mind-blowing idea Harari throws out there, that their social structures might have been way more fluid than we typically picture.
Oh yeah, he really challenges those traditional narratives.
Forget about the nuclear family with the dad, mom, 2.5 kids, and a white picket fence. We're talking about potentially more communal living arrangements.
Exactly. Harari suggests that concepts we think of as givens, now monogamy, even fatherhood, might actually be relatively recent developments in human history.
Whoa. So you tell me early humans were out there experimenting with different ways of, like, doing relationships and family?
Potentially. It's a controversial idea for sure,
Yeah.
but it makes you question how much of what we consider natural is really just cultural conditioning.
Wow. So much for human nature being set in stone, right?
Right. It's a good reminder that our ideas about family, relationships, even gender roles, they're not inevitable. They're shaped by our history and our beliefs.
It really makes you wonder, then, knowing that so much of what we take for granted is actually just, Like, stuff we've made up, does it make these systems any less real or powerful in our lives? What do you think?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Because we might know it's all imagined, but it sure feels real when you're living it.
It totally does. It's like, just because we invented money doesn't mean I don't stress about paying my bills every month.
Exactly. Harari really wants us to grasp that these imagined realities, they have a huge impact on how we live, think, and interact with each other, even if we don't always realize it.
Yeah.
Think about it. Would you act the same way if you lived in a society with totally different ideas about family or money?
It's true. It's like that saying, reality is just an illusion, but a very persistent one.
Exactly. And that illusion, as we're going to see, shapes everything from our most intimate relationships to the course of global politics.
Okay, so we've gone from fire and hobbits to questioning the very fabric of society. What's next on this wild historical ride?
Well, next up, we're tackling a big one. The agricultural revolution.
Ah, yes, the dawn of farming. Everyone loves a good invention story, right?
You'd think so, but Harari argues that the shift to agriculture wasn't necessarily the straightforward leap forward we often imagine.
Wait, really? I thought farming was like the start of civilization as we know it.
It was definitely a major turning point, but Harari encourages us to look deeper. He argues that it was a mixed bag with some surprising downsides.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, for starters, think about what farming actually entails. It's hard, back-breaking work.
That's true. I can barely keep a houseplant alive.
Right. And early farmers, they didn't have fancy tractors and irrigation systems. It was grueling labor, day in and day out.
So much for the idyllic life of a farmer.
Right. And on top of that, while agriculture did lead to greater food production overall, it also meant that people were relying on a much narrower range of crops.
So less variety in their diets. No more hunter-gatherer buffet.
Exactly. And that had consequences. Harari points out that early farmers were actually more prone to malnutrition and disease than their hunter-gatherer ancestors, precisely because of this lack of dietary diversity.
Wow, I never thought about it like that. It's like the irony of having more food but potentially being less healthy.
It's a classic example of how progress isn't always linear. And it gets even more interesting when you consider how this agricultural past still affects us today. Harari uses this fascinating example, our gorging gene.
Or what now?
Your gorging gene. It's this like primal instinct to eat as much as you can, whenever you can.
Oh, so that's what I should call it. I thought it was just me and my love for potato chips.
Well, you're not alone. But Harari suggests this instinct is hardwired into us from our ancestors who lived in a world where calorie-rich food was scarce.
Makes sense. If you didn't know when your next meal was coming, you'd stuff yourself silly too.
Exactly. Back then, it was a survival mechanism. But in our modern world of abundance and easy access to junk food.
It becomes a recipe for, well, let's just say I'm glad stretchy pants are back in style.
Right. It's fascinating how these ancient instincts still linger, even when they're no longer serving us.
Totally. So agriculture may have filled our stomachs, but it also might have contributed to some of our modern health struggles.
It's definitely something to consider. And the impact of agriculture goes way beyond our diets. This shift to a more settled agrarian lifestyle had huge social and political consequences.
Oh yeah, I bet. More food usually means more people, right?
Exactly. Agriculture allowed for larger, denser populations that could stay put. And that set the stage for the emergence of villages, cities, and eventually entire empires.
Which, if we're being honest, usually also means the emergence of new forms of inequality and power struggles, right?
You got it. The agricultural revolution was this pivotal moment, no doubt. But it wasn't all sunshine and roses. It's a powerful example of how even seemingly positive changes can have unexpected consequences that echo through history.
And that, my friends, is why we dig deep. The past is rarely simple, but understanding its complexities, both the good and the not so good, can help us navigate the present and think differently about the future, which we'll be doing a lot more of after a quick break.
And this is where Harari takes us on, like a completely different kind of journey. We're going to talk about the things we often think of as like dividing people.
Okay, I'm listening. What kinds of things?
Empires, money, religion, big, powerful forces throughout history.
Oh yeah, I can't really talk about history without those. But you said dividing forces.
That's how we usually see them, right? But Harari makes this really interesting case that they've also been major forces for unifying humanity.
Hold on. I'm going to need you to unpack that one. How can something that causes conflict also bring people together?
It's all about perspective. Take empires, for example. Yeah, they were often built through, conquest and violence, no doubt. But in their wake, They often spread common cultures, languages, legal systems, ways of doing things across vast territories.
Right.
It's like, think about the Roman Empire for a second.
Okay, the Roman Empire, got it.
Their influence on language, law, architecture
Yeah.
still felt throughout Europe, even beyond.
True. I never thought about it like that, but you're right. It's like they spread their culture everywhere they went.
Exactly. And it wasn't always pretty, but it did create these larger, more interconnected worlds, more trade, exchange of ideas. And that leads us to money.
Money, the root of all evil, right?
Right, or is it? I mean, we love to hate on money.
Right. Hard to argue with that. Money equals greed, inequality, all the bad stuff.
It can, for sure. But Harari wants us to see it differently. He argues that money is actually a kind of universal language of trust.
Whoa. A language of trust.
Think about it. Money lets total strangers cooperate, trade with each other on a massive scale. It's something we totally take for granted. But it's actually pretty mind-blowing.
It's true, now that you mention it. Imagine trying to buy, like, a cup of coffee if we only had bartering.
Right, I'll trade you this chicken for that latte. It just wouldn't work. Money is like the oil that keeps the whole machine running smoothly.
Okay, I'm starting to see it. Empires spread cultures, money smooths out trade between strangers. What about religion? That seems like it would be inherently divisive, right?
You'd think so, right? All those different beliefs, practices.
Exactly. Talk about conflict. Wars have been fought over less.
Absolutely. But here's the thing. Religion has also historically played a huge role in creating these large-scale communities with shared beliefs, values, a sense of belonging.
Okay, so it's about more than just what you believe. It's about the community it creates.
Exactly. Think about the spread of major religions like Christianity, Islam, Buddhism. They created these vast networks of believers, all connected by some fundamental ideas about the world and how to live in it.
But let's not sugarcoat it. Religions, empires, money, they've all been used to justify some pretty terrible things throughout history too.
No doubt. That's the paradox, isn't it? These powerful forces, the ones that can unify us, also have a dark side. They can be used for good or for evil. It all comes down to how we, as humans, choose to use them.
That's a good reminder that, again, it's about recognizing the complexity of the past. Things aren't always black and white. We have to hold both the good and the bad in mind if we're gonna, learn from history.
Exactly. We can't just cherry pick the parts that make us feel good. Progress isn't a straight line. But the more we understand these complexities, the better equipped we are to face the challenges and opportunities of, the present and the future.
Speaking of progress, maybe we should move on to a period that's like the poster child for progress, the scientific revolution. What does Harari have to say about what made this period so revolutionary?
This is where it gets really meta. You ready for this?
Hit me with it.
Harari says it wasn't any particular discovery or invention. It was something much bigger than that. He argues the most revolutionary aspect of the scientific revolution was the understanding that we don't know everything.
Okay, that's kind of a mind bender. So you're saying it wasn't about the answers, it was about admitting we didn't have all the answers.
Exactly. Before the scientific revolution, most people in the West got their answers about how the world worked from religion or ancient traditions. They assumed those old explanations were true.
And along comes science, saying, hold my beer.
Pretty much, it was this huge shift in thinking. People started embracing uncertainty, questioning assumptions, acknowledging there was a lot they didn't know.
So instead of just accepting whatever they'd been told, these early scientists were all about asking, why? How can we test that? That kind of thing.
Exactly. Show me the evidence. That was radical at the time. And this new way of thinking, it led to a huge emphasis on observation, experimentation, using math to understand the natural world.
And that's where we see the seeds of all the crazy technological advancements that would transform the world, right?
Totally. The steam engine, for example, a pivotal invention of the Industrial Revolution. It came about from applying scientific knowledge to practical problems.
And boom, suddenly we have factories, railroads, mass production, the whole modern world, basically.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our incredible journey through Sapiens. It's been real, folks. We've covered a lot of ground, from the dawn of humanity to the complexities of our modern world. If you're looking for a book that'll make you think differently about, everything, Sapiens is definitely worth a read. Big thanks to our expert for guiding us on this incredible journey.
Anytime. It's always a pleasure to talk about this stuff.
And to our listeners, thanks for coming along for the ride. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into the ideas that are shaping our world. Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.